Well, hi, and welcome to another edition of Land and Legacy by Griffith Realty. I'm Scott Griffith. We are once again doing another podcast. Carol and I, my sister Carol, Vice President of Griffith Realty, and I are doing these on a regular basis now to try to both be educational and try to be a little informative and tell a little history of the community as we go along. And so we're kind of excited to do another one because today's another special day. We're really, really excited today that, as you know from our other podcasts, and if you haven't listened, you would know that we are very interested in the advocacy for property rights. And we have one of what we consider the premier property rights people in the state of Michigan. We have our guest, Brad Ward from the Michigan Realtors, who's the senior vice president of policy and
legal affairs.
Affairs.
It's a very long wordy title.
Long title, Brad, for a great guy. So Brad's here today, and for people who are more like myself and a little more layman, Brad does our lobbying, for lack of a better term, and we're pretty proud of the fact, as many know, Carol and I have both been presidents of the Michigan Association of Realtors, and now known as the Michigan Realtors. And we're just really proud of the fact that we lobby for the property rights of all citizens. We're the only industry in the world that actually stands up for property rights of owners. Otherwise, there'd be no lobby for them. It'd be just our industry. So we're real proud of that, and Brad's our front guy on that who does the great job and the great work for that. And because of his good work and because of what the Michigan Realtors stand for, we're here today to talk a little bit about one of the greatest things that's happened. There's no secret that the real estate market has had double-digit inflation for the last 2 or 3 years. It's difficult. We have the largest population since the boomers, with the millennials coming in the marketplace, and they're trying to buy a home, and it's very difficult to save to buy a home. And we have passed a piece of legislation, which Brad's going to touch on here, that is going to help first-time home buyers get a home. So, Brad, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Scott and Carol. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast and to chat a little bit about the new law that was signed into effect by Governor Whitmer here in Michigan, the Michigan First-Time Homebuyer Savings Account. So, as you know, over the years, down payments requirements have been going up. It's harder and harder to save for the home, especially if you're, a young man or woman who comes out of our college or universities. Get a job here in Michigan, you have student loan debt, you have rent you have to pay, you have a car you have to have, your cell phone. Sometimes the very little amount that you do have to put away, it's often hard to get to kind of that nest egg you need to put a down payment on a home. So increasingly, folks have reached out to mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, and aunt and uncle, or even community organizations or churches to help with that down payment assistance. So really, what we wanted to do is we wanted to make home ownership a focus, a goal to strive for. We call it, right? It's the American dream of home ownership. Yep. It's the quickest way to build wealth in America is through owning a home. Right. So we worked with, we represent about 35,000 members across the state. We have a policy committee that's very committed to not only private property rights, but also advancement of home ownership, real estate investment, and a strong and vibrant Michigan. So the first-time homebuyer savings account is really the first vehicle of its kind in Michigan where it's a savings account specifically dedicated towards a first home purchase. It's not original in terms of the United States. I think we're the 9th state.
I'll say we're not first in by any means in this deal, right? Yeah.
No, but we're the best in. So if you can't be the first,
yes.
You got to be the best.
Especially since we're in the 3rd month of this.
Right. Well, and it's not been an easy issue to work on.
Sure.
This was something that was sent to Governor Snyder's desk at the very end of his term, and was vetoed. And I think. The veto at the time came because there was kind of this philosophy in government of, we're for lower tax rates overall, and we're not going to pick winners and losers through the tax code. And we never saw it as picking winners and losers. We always saw it as something that was, it's good policy. You want people to be here. You have jobs coming back to the state of Michigan. Why not keep, we had this brain drain as Governor Snyder called it. And so when we talked about talent retention, we're like, this is a way to give people that opportunity to stay here. So what it is a tax incentivized savings account. Much like the Michigan Education Savings Program. So if you had,
Yeah.
know, the MESP program, you can put away money for college. You get a deduction on your state income taxes, so long as it's used to go to college here in Michigan. So we had the same intent with home ownership. So this is a tax deduction on an annual basis. So if you're an individual filer, it is $5,000 annually. If you're a joint filer, it's $10,000 deduction that you can have on your state income taxes, and you can deduct up to $50,000 for the lifetime of the account. So you can put in up to $50,000 to realize those tax deductions. The life of the account runs for about 20 years. You can open it in your own name, and the great thing about this is you can open it up in the name of a beneficiary. So if you had a child that you save for college, you put it in their name, right? Because they're the ones who's going, but you got the tax deduction. So you can open it up for a child. You can open it up for a grandchild or whatever it might be. So there is that opportunity to save for someone else that you want to keep here in the state. So deductibility up to $50,000 and 20 years is the lifetime of the account, and it can grow tax-free so long as it's used for that first-time home purchase in Michigan.
So just because it's going to be new for all of us, and it's still new even for me. So if I open up a account for like this for my grandchildren, let's say, do they have the ability to open one up for themselves too, or do they have to contribute only to the one? Is it only in one name one time, or is it?
Nope.
How does that work?
That's a great question. So no, so if you started one for your grandchild, and let's say the parents did as well, you could have two accounts in the name of that child. But again, the kicker is that it has to be used for a first-time home purchase in Michigan. Sure. So we've taken care, worked with the Department of Treasury to make sure this isn't just some kind of tax shelter. There's real teeth on the end of this that if you don't use it for the intended purpose, there is a clawback. So it's taxes and then some if you don't use it for that first-time home purchase in Michigan. Yeah, you can open it up in the name of the same beneficiary. In two different accounts. That's not a problem.
Okay. And so, but the one beneficiary will never get more than the benefit of the $50,000.
No, they will get.
They could get two could be
they
two
could
$50,000.
get two $50,000. Yep.
Okay, I mean,
plus whatever.
Just don't want to be stupid, but I didn't want to realize there's a cap.
Nope. And it's a great question. And look, the law was just signed about a month ago, and so we're still waiting on the Department of Treasury to kind of come up with some of the guidance, some of the forms. But the way that this bill language is written is that yes, you could have an account for your grandson, and then the parents could have an account in his name as well. But
isn't that great? Yeah.
So a question I had, Brad, which if I understand this correctly, the definition, according to this legislation, for a first-time home buyer is someone who hasn't bought a house or purchased a home in 3 years.
So yeah, if you haven't owned a principal residence within the last 3 years, you would qualify under the definition of a first-time home buyer. So, that was part of the way our policy committee looked at it. There was this intent of, look, we had some people who went through some pretty hard economic times about a decade ago and are now in a position where credit's been repaired. They're starting to save again. They're back in employment, and you want them to get back into the housing market. So we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for people who hadn't owned or were displaced from the housing at some point to get back into home ownership and have that incentive there. Also works well if you're a renter. You move out of state for a few years, you're a renter out of state and you haven't owned in 3 years, that you can come back to Michigan and make that principal residence purchase.
Isn't that excellent?
I think that's a pretty a pretty good perk that might disappear, or people will not be familiar what you think of first-time home buyers.
Right.
On other programs that we've had over decades that were just, if you had a deed to a house, you owned a house forever, Yeah. That's an interesting.
It's really cool because it goes so well with Michigan. If you remember when Lawrence Young was here to talk to us at our podcast, he mentioned how we're the third highest home ownership rate in the country. So it's consistent with our values of our state that if you don't own a home, we'd like you to own one,
Right.
And that's great because owning changes everything. You're a taxpayer. You take a different pride in the community. There's everything that goes with that. Mm-hmm. So that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan's always been blessed with a number of their citizens being homeowners. We have, like as you pointed out, and as Lawrence pointed out, more homeowners than we do renters in the state. So that's great.
It's owed probably to our industrial past and giving the middle class a chance to be the middle class, but great for us,
Yeah.
I mean, it's what it's all about. So I got to tell you, this is such a great ability for families to be able to take care of their kids. I mean, we're going to go through this period where this huge population of boomers wants to pass on to their kids and their grandkids, and this is a chance for them to do something that's really special. And I mean, as a practical matter, I know this sounds even weirder, but having capital being saved is a wonderful thing no matter who's saving it, because it keeps liquidity in the system, so it'll allow for lending to continue. So it's a really cool feature that way.
Yeah, well, and now that interest rates are going up, you might be able to get more out of your general savings account, more than 0.01% or whatever it might be. But, I want to point out this can be opened up with kind of your traditional lending institutions, so bank, credit union. But you can also, if you wanted to take a little bit more risk, you could put it in kind of one of those, savings account on steroids through a brokerage firm or something like that.
Oh, good thought.
So there is the ability to invest with a little bit more, potential for a return.
So this is really the GoFundMe of down payment assistance.
GoFundMe out of my basement.
we want to make sure, like I said, we want to make sure it's being used for the intended purposes. Right. And there's a lot of guardrails that are set up. So, things that were put into the bill throughout the process that came as great ideas from our local state reps and things like that were, you have to have the account open for more than a year before you can use it. So in other words, someone just can't take a bunch of money, dump it into an account for a few weeks and like, oh, I found my home, I'm going to pull my down payment out. So it's got to be open for a month. And then we also accounted on the other side. We have hardship exemptions. So if someone needs to, withdraw the money because they've fallen on hard times, there's a hardship exemption there where you don't get penalized for that withdrawal. If you're a military member and you get transferred out of state, to go to another base or whatever, you are able to take that account and close it without penalty as well. So, like I said, really good policy behind this. A lot of people thinking about, okay, how do we protect, not just the state, because we are giving people a deduction, so that's that's money being foregone by the state of Michigan. But how do we make sure that we maximize, the biggest bang for their buck? So it is the tax deduction piece, and it is the growing tax free in that account. So. Really excited at the opportunities. This is really something where families can use it. They can talk with their kids about smart savings, and financial literacy, and this is how we save for a home. Very exciting program, and we're proud to be one of the states that has it, and thankful to our bill sponsors. We had a great group of bill sponsors on this, if you don't mind me mentioning them.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate. I mean,
so over in the Senate, we had Senator Ken Horn from the Frankenmuth area. We had Senator Jim Runstead, who is another bill sponsor. He's from northern Oakland County in the White Lake area. We also had Representative Mari Manoogian from Birmingham, and then Representative John DeMoose from up in Harbor Springs. Bipartisan, bicameral legislation that made its way to the governor's desk and got signed. So really grateful for all the hard work that they put in. And each one of them had a great story to tell. Ken Horn's got grandkids. John DeMoose has children of his own that he, is talking about saving for a home. Representative Manoogian is she's looking to purchase her first home. So she's great. And the really cool thing about this is you think like all of this occurs in like a Lansing bubble, like, hey, I heard you pass this bill, but I've had friends reach out to me about this. And we've had financial planners call our office. So the word is getting out there beyond just, the people who kind of watch these things in state government.
Well, I got to tell you, Brad, I know you don't get this, but we want to thank you because, a multi-year attempt to get something like this through is phenomenal. The fact you stick with it and you get it done, and you did get it done, is so phenomenal. We're particularly grateful. Carol and I know the value of it. Our family, we've been blessed to have a great family and learn our values, but it's nice to be able to have that for everybody, So.
Yep. No, I credit our members who, they didn't take their eye off the ball. They wanted to look for ways to improve this after that first veto, and, just like I said, very grateful to get it done. It was what I call an aircraft carrier issue. So it's vitally important, but it doesn't necessarily move fast sometimes.
Well, you got it through the straits, so that's good.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and because you do a lot of special work in the sense of property rights and the realtors lobbying, tell us some of the other things going on. There's more that you're doing than just this.
There is. So let's say it says 17th. So back on March, I'm going to go 14th. The governor signed a piece of legislation that we had been working on. That really affects home affordability and had been holding up some real estate transactions in the state. And that deals with individual parcels that have mobile homes on them. So a lot of our members who work in more out-county areas, you run into this quite often, or if you're working in some of the northern Michigan areas, a lot of these hunting cabins are, someone created a foundation, they brought in a mobile home, put it on the property, connected it to utilities, took the wheels off the thing, built a porch. For all intents and purposes, you wouldn't even be able to look at it and notice it as a mobile home. But they are still treated as personal property or detachable property in the eyes of the law until you affix them. So when you wanted to get a conventional loan on these, or you wanted to refinance, if you lived in one, oftentimes the lender would require an affidavit of affixture. So you would take the title to the mobile home, which is kept with the Secretary of State's office, and you would combine that with the title to the real property, which is at the Register of Deeds. And so there would only be one title, the lender would only have one loan, and it would all be treated as real property. About a year and a half ago, the Secretary of State's office, who was administering, the program for issuing new titles to mobile homes, got sued and stopped issuing new titles through the process. To get a new title, all you had to do at the time, a year and a half ago, was you'd walk into your branch office, you had a surety bond, and you said, I need a new title to this home, and the bond would cover anyone who had an interest that may come later to say, hey, I own a piece of that mobile home. And they got rid of the surety bond process because what had happened was some of the mobile home parks had started using the surety bond process to retake possession of homes in their community that they had considered abandoned. Well, it only took one of those where the owner had not abandoned the mobile home to say, hey, Secretary of State's office, you didn't give me due process. This guy just walked in and you gave him a title to my home. So it changed the game for everyone, whether the mobile home was in a park or whether the mobile home was on an individual parcel outside of a mobile home community. And so getting a title was not possible. And a lot of these things, they've changed hands over the years. They went through a foreclosure and someone bought them at sheriff's sale, or they bought them through a bank. And so the title gets lost, it gets misplaced. But when they want to sell it and there's a new potential buyer or they want to refinance, you need to find that old title. And a lot of times it's more difficult because, the longer these things have been there, one, you don't know it's a mobile home, and two, you can't find the vehicle identification number if there is one.
In the last 5 years, this has happened to me twice. So I absolutely understand completely. And as you say, one, you wouldn't have known if I hadn't have been able to determine it was a mobile home, which you almost regret you could tell. And then we had to go through that whole process. And in one case, we couldn't get through the process. So it just shows you that we needed a savior here,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, what happened was the Secretary of State's office said, well, we're not using the surety bond, so you got to go to court to get a new title.
That's what they said.
So now you're talking about an extra $3,000 to $5,000 on the transaction.
And time.
And all the weeks that you have to go through the court system. So in a time we're talking about affordable housing and trying to get people in homes because the demand is so tremendous, it was really kind of jamming up a lot of these transactions. So the bill that was passed and signed, on the 14th, allows a much more streamlined affidavit of affixture process for homes that need new titles. If you don't have the title, you can now take an affidavit to the Secretary of State's office, so long as the home meets really kind of like a list of requirements. One, it had to have been there for 15 years or more. And then the second one is that it's connected to utilities, the wheels have been removed, things like that.
Sure.
So it's identify it as an actual structure,
Right.
Rather than something you can just attach a truck to tomorrow and pull
gone.
away. Right. So, I think as soon as the law was just signed, just a few days ago. So we're really making sure the Secretary of State's office, we worked with them throughout the process. So I think we'll start seeing a lot of these that have been hung up for the last few months. And,
Nice.
Owners trying to decide whether or not it's worth a few $1,000s to go to court to get this title. I think we'll start to see those free up and start to move and hopefully operate smoothly going into the future. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, and so it's a totally separate topic, and I just guess I wanted your perspective on it. It's in every community, the conversation of workforce housing, going from the terminology of affordable housing to housing you can afford if you have a job, so that your police, your fire department, your teachers, the person who starts at a factory entry level can live in your community, because we've talked about this a number of times, even in this, is that in our community, about 70% of those people drive in to Livingston County to work because they can't afford to live here. So do you see some ideas on the horizon that are going to help us with that?
We do. In our policy committee that I mentioned earlier is kind of, this is an evolving discussion, and it's a discussion that, the thing about it is there's no one silver bullet, right?
Yeah, there's no single bullet. You can say that's the thing.
You pass this bill and we're going to have a ton of houses and we're going to have them tomorrow. I think, as you guys both know, you've been doing this for a long time. Inventory or just the availability, the basic laws of supply and demand, if we had more supply to meet our demand, that brings the price of housing down. So, we have the supply and demand inventory issue. We have an issue of material costs, labor costs. New construction just isn't happening like it used to. We're building probably about 30% of really what we should be to keep up with demand. If you think back to kind of, the early 2000s, when building was having that boom, we were keeping up with that demand. Now, we told a different story coming out of 2007 because of the mortgage crisis and things like that. But material costs, labor costs, and then the other thing is local government regulations.
Regulations huge around here. So much.
So think about, okay, what are those things that exist within, the city of Brighton, any of the surrounding townships that kind of lend to the cost of someone being able to put a shovel in the dirt. Because oftentimes you find that, you can't really start building at anything less than a certain price point.
Exactly. Yeah.
The builder's not going to lose money on the building.
Right.
So we got to be creative in the way we work as private and public sectors in terms of coming together to kind of figure out what it is. And the other term that they use is affordable workforce, or just housing attainability.
It makes sense. What can you afford, and what can I get, and what does it cost? And if they don't match, it's not attainable.
Yeah. Well, and just like I said, even just like any new housing that comes on the market creates space within the market. You need the high end stuff for people to move up and the new home buyers to move in. You need, first time home buyer stock that's there that allow people to get into the housing market and to hopefully create that churn kind of up and down the line. But, I was probably the least popular guy in the room at a local government conference a couple of years ago when they asked me about housing affordability. And I said, well, look at what you have, here. You have height restrictions, you have lot size minimums, you have zoning that doesn't allow for accessory dwelling units or anything like that. So you pretty much have ruled out density. And if you want to talk about
any creativity and density, you took away. So now what?
Yeah. So I think it'll take a while. And obviously people move to communities because they like the character of the community, and to just throw that out the window is very difficult. It's like saying, hey, Brighton High School and Heartland High School are going to merge. We're going to merge school districts
because it's efficient.
Right. We're going to merge school districts, and I'm a bulldog, and I'll always be a bulldog, and I will never be a Heartland Eagle. So it's one of those things where there's a lot of pride within that community. People don't like to see it change, but that conversation has to start occurring to say, okay, if we want to talk about being able to house the people who work here, what does that look like? Yeah, it's going to include density. We're going to have some multifamily dwellings. You're going to have a duplex in a neighborhood of single homes. You're going to have an apartment building or something downtown.
Sure.
That, so that's, there's, like I said, it's a multitude of issues, but I think it's that conversation that has to occur between the public sector and the private sector.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you're focused on that. We appreciate all that you do, Brad, for the property rights and for the Michigan Realtors. We're also proud of Brad because he's lived in the general area here for probably some 25 years and grew up not far down the road anyway. And so you're about to get stuck with the problem everybody gets with me at the end. I always ask him two questions: what would you do? What's your favorite thing to do here, and what's your favorite place to go to dinner? So my favorite thing to do in Brighton, and my favorite place to go to dinner. Oh, wow. Okay. Does it have to be? Okay. I live in South Lyon. Yeah, you live close.
I grew up in Novi, lived in Howell before. My wife teaches at Hawkins Elementary here just down the road.
I know. Yeah,
so I would say my favorite dinner place currently is Bourbon's.
Nice.
My kids really love Saginaw. We're sad to see them go. But and frankly, the last couple of years during the pandemic, we just loved coming downtown. Because they had, they put up the barriers, they shut off downtown. You can walk the streets. The kids can go into the shops. We can get tacos out of the window.
Fun, yeah.
My son loves the skateboard store, the
Cool.
Concrete Roots or whatever it's called. We love coming down to the area, especially as the days get warmer here. I'm looking forward to doing that more and more.
Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate it. Sorry to put you on the spot, but we do
No,
that for
that's
everybody
great.
that's local. We like to hear what
I have an answer, so we're good.
That's
I
good.
don't have to duck that question.
Well, Brad, this has been great in this podcast. Is there anything else that we should really know about as it relates to any of this?
Yeah, for people to get more information on the Michigan First-Time Homebuyer Savings Account and to get kind of the latest and greatest as Treasury rolls out all of their guidelines, we've established a website as Michigan Realtors. It's firsthomemichigan.com, firsthomemichigan.com. There's a place to sign up for more information, so you put your name and your email in there, and then that way, as we develop more materials to talk about this, as Treasury develops their guidelines, you'll be kind of the first to know about all those wonderful things happening. We're starting to push it out to the Realtor membership, and we have a digital campaign that's running currently, and then look to throughout the year to see a little bit more of the promotion of this program as it develops.
For being our guest today with Carol and I.
Thanks for being here. You've just
so
been
much.
such a good advocate.
You guys do great. You do great work for us, and
glad
thank
you're
you
close
all
by.
for listening to Land and Legacy, and we look forward to talking to you another time.